We are back with the 163rd edition of the Quarantinecast. I know we're no longer in quarantine, or a lot of us aren't. I am, but most people are in quarantine, but we're still doing these. And I'm going to have a guest on I haven't spoken to yet before. Without further ado, it's UFC Bantamweight Domingo Pilarte. How are you doing?
Good, man. Thank you for having me. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for taking the time. I appreciate it. I guess before we get going, like I said, I mean, crazy year, pandemic, lockdowns, things opening up, gyms being shut down, the sport being shut down. What's the past year been like for you on a personal note?
I mean, honestly, it hasn't been bad for me. I was one of the blessed ones. I know a lot of people have been through a lot of hardships during these times, but I mean, I was able to kind of really just travel a little bit and really just train, man. That's literally all I did all pandemic, and for me, it couldn't have worked out better because, I mean, I take it as I had over a year to just get better, you know.
Yeah, I talked to a lot of guys, and they said that the break was kind of nice for them because they probably wouldn't have taken a break if it wasn't forced upon them. Do you feel
Yeah.
like it was kind of nice to have like a mental, let's take a step away from the sport and just kind of focus on the mental side of things, which a lot of athletes ignore?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, for me, I had just fought that February, um, my second fight, and then the pandemic happened in March. So for me, it was kind of good timing because, I had just finished a fight, and it didn't go the way I wanted it to. So I got plenty of time to reflect and to really think about a lot of things and a lot of things of about in my game and moving forward. So it was good for me.
Yeah, I want to talk a little bit about that fight. For those who don't know, it was overturned after the result. But how do you assess your performance? Obviously, it didn't go the way, like you said, that you would have
Mhm.
liked. But how do you assess your performance in your first two UFC fights?
Um, well, I have I've broken them down many times, and I'll try to make it as short as possible without sounding sour because I'm not. I don't have a problem with losing, and um, obviously my last one, Journey, he beat me. He beat me fair and square. The debut, that one was a little. That one was a little different. It was a split decision loss to a guy coming down from featherweight, Felipe Colares, and I mean, honestly, bro, like the guy's a great kid. I take nothing away from him, but I mean, he didn't do anything in that fight, and I literally felt that I won 2 rounds to 0. The first round, I took some time to let him tire himself out. In rounds 2 and 3, I picked up the pace, and he was on the defense the whole time. I mean, he might have reversed once or twice and gotten maybe 30 seconds of control, but it was in Texas, and you know how the judging's been here, and the judging has been horrible. And I can't complain. It's not like that fight was like an amazing performance. I was coming off of a knee surgery, and where I had rehabbed my ACL for like 10 months, and then that was my debut. So there was a little bit of that. A lot of factors. My mother had just passed away, and I didn't even really, you know, um, get a chance to really mourn her or really process it until after the fight. I had a lot of things going on. Not to say any excuses. This is just what happened. But and then to come out on the wrong end of a decision, it is what it is. And I was like, okay, I was probably a little bit too passive. So let's pick it up. We know what we're capable of. And then when I got the fight with Journey, um, man, I think the kick that I landed, right away kind of hurt me more than it helped me because I remember when I landed that high kick, it was a really solid, hit, and I saw him, kind of wobble and his eyes kind of got weak, and for the next, I don't know, what was it, maybe 20 seconds, you saw he wasn't really there, and then within 30 something seconds, he recovered and he was able to counter on my over aggression. After the fight, he was actually in a stretcher, and I kind of wondered why, and they had told me that I had broken his jaw with that kick, and so he suffered a pretty long like I really did get him really good, so when I saw that I was like, well, I mean, he was hurt. I did go for the kill, and I got countered because I was being a little too over aggressive and a little careless, and I learned from it. Like I said, he beat me, and I mean, turns out he had a lot of THC in his system, and well, I mean, it helps you relax, man, and honestly, I know what it can do, and it's beneficial. So the thing is if you're not gonna abide by the rules, then they overturn it. So it got overturned, and it is what it is. I mean, I'm sure everybody wants to smoke a joint before they fight, right? But you can't do it. There's no excuse to fail a drug test. If it's a tainted supplement, that's another thing. With marijuana, guys complain about it, but I mean, we all make sure that we're in the levels before the fight, and then if I mean, you just can't fight from smoking. You just can't do it. You just got to follow the rules. So I'm sure on their end they were probably upset about the overturn, but it is what it is. And the pandemic happened, and I literally took the last year, man, to really digest my performances, those two fights, and really just get better. And that's all I've done, and I feel really, really good right now. Honestly.
Obviously I wanted to talk about those two fights, but there's one more I want to talk about, and it was one of my favorite fights of the entire Contender Series, and that was yours against Vince Morales. Vince Morales is a guy I'm very close with. Wasn't close with him at the time, so it wasn't like I was rooting for him or anything like that. Yeah. But that was an amazing fight. How did it feel to get that UFC contract and to finally get the call to come and compete in an organization that you've wanted to compete for your entire life?
Well, I'm actually pretty decent friends with Vince too. I train with his cousin out there, Ricky, in Portland. Ricky, he's a cool guy. Yeah, and I mean, it felt really good, man. I think I had started fighting professionally, like my second fight, which was my first pro fight because I had an amateur one. I was 19, so from 19 years old fighting professionally around the time that they didn't have that many fights. And then to make it to the UFC, I believe it was 2018, like 9 years after my pro debut. And then I believe it was maybe 13 years overall in the sport. I mean, it felt really good, man. It was, it was awesome. Obviously I didn't get the start I wanted to, but what I've learned from those fights, the experience, I wouldn't trade it for anything because it's made me a better fighter. And honestly, experience is one of the most important things you can get or you can have when it comes to fighting. So, I got experience, and, mistakes were made. I learned from them, and I'm going to try to apply, that new knowledge of not making the same mistakes, and we'll see how it goes. Fight's a fight.
One of the things about that fight, which is also going to be relatable to this upcoming one that I'm going to touch on in a little bit, is no crowd. You seem to thrive under that on the Contender Series. Do you feel like that's something that's going to play into your advantage on fight night on August 21st?
Well, it was kind of weird when we did it in the Contender, to be honest. I mean, I liked it, and I fought really hard, considering Dana, all the matchmakers were there, and everybody's watching you. I wasn't a huge fan of not having crowds because I do like the crowd. But also at the same time, honestly, it doesn't bother me. It's not like I need them either. I prefer a crowd, but if they're not there, it's only going to help me focus more. And then it's also going to help me hear my coaches more. So, there's pros and cons to it. But I think for this fight with Kelleher, I think I might be a little more pleased with that. It's going to be, at the Apex, and there's not going to be that many people because he is experienced. And I'm going to have to be very patient in this fight and use my experience. And as long as I do that, it should be a good night. But, I did like that. Like I said, the differences, the pros and cons to having the crowd and not having one.
We were talking a little bit, I think, last week about the fight, just in DMs and stuff. What is it about this matchup that you like? Is it the fact that he's very experienced? Is it the fact that it's Brian Kelleher and people recognize him? What is it about this matchup that excites you?
Well, those are some reasons. It is Brian Kelleher. He's beaten former world champs. He beat Barao. He's beat really good guys. He was on a good win streak for a while. And for me, I think he's only like 3 years older than me. He's like 34 and I'm 31. And I mean, I've been in the sport a long time. I had my first fight in 2008 and I started training back in 2005, and I was in martial arts when I was younger. So I'm not new to combat sports. I bring experience too. It's just, I think the position that I'm in right now, having coming off of, even though it was a no contest and then the split decision loss, a win over Brian would literally, basically, I would say in terms of career, it would kind of push those last two fights just out of the way. And if I have an amazing performance against him, then I'm back, where I want to be. Obviously, that's not going to be something easy. Kelleher is experienced; he is good. But other things that I like about the matchup is that we were supposed to fight my debut, and I was comfortable with it then. I like he's a good striker. He's a good grappler. He's all around good everywhere from what I've seen. It doesn't look like he's like an incredible expert at anything, as if he was like an Adesanya on the feet or a Khabib in wrestling. He's a good all around fighter, kind of like myself. So our styles are going to match really well. And, he seems like a cool guy. You know what I mean? So I'm sure it'll be a fun fight, man. Like, this is a business. It's a job. And, it's a passion that we as fighters get to do for a living. And, I'm learning to enjoy that part of the UFC, of being a professional fighter and, traveling and doing the things that I get to do and just be grateful for it, and that's also helped me to, just look forward to every fight that I have and just take it in, and really, have fun with it.
I know it's still 4 months away, but just given the circumstances of the past year in terms of fights, that could change. You could get a call tomorrow and someone tests positive for COVID or something like that.
Yeah.
Do you feel like your preparation for this camp is going to be slightly different, just given the fact that there's so many weird things that have happened this past year?
Pretty much, and I haven't always been this way, but this is as I grow as a martial artist and as a fighter myself. I'm training differently now, and I mean it's always been a lifestyle, but I'm one of those type of fighters that believes it should be a lifestyle. You should always be in shape. You should always be ready to go. Other guys like to, they like to have fun. They like to drink, and there's nothing wrong with that. I don't drink alcohol anymore. It's, I only did for maybe a year or so socially, but as an athlete, it doesn't do anything for you. So, if I'm dieting and living the lifestyle the way that I do, man, I always feel comfortable. I need maybe a few weeks to make weight and to get in peak shape for my conditioning. But yeah, it wouldn't be much different. Obviously, if it was like, let's say, a taller, longer guy who likes to grapple too, it'd be, slightly different. But Brian's about the average size bantamweight, I would say, is probably 5'6" to like 5'8" 5'9", and like I said, he's well rounded, so it's not like I have to really, really like watch out in one area. I have to be careful everywhere because he's good everywhere, and I know this coming in. So, I think that'll, work to my advantage as long as I prepare properly. But yeah, for any other fight, I would be ready to go, hopefully, it wouldn't be too soon. I am a bigger bantamweight, so cutting weight for me, I do need to plan it. I'm always there, but, if I got like 1 or 2 weeks notice, it'd be hard to make 136 for me. But I'm not super heavy either. I could do it in 3 to 4 weeks. It just depends. I mean, if they were to call me maybe a few weeks before, my Kelleher fight or a month before, I could definitely be ready to go because I'm already, in fight shape. But yeah.
All right, I want to ask a couple more, and then I'll let you go. I know you have some training to do. One thing that stood out, I was going through some of the odds in your fights, and I'm not sure if this is something you've tuned into, but every time you're the underdog, you get your hand raised.
Oh yeah.
When you're the favorite is the times you lose. What is that? Is that just?
I'll explain it to you, man. I'll explain it to you right now. I'm very aware of that. Very aware, man. I think it. I've thought about it, and I do know, and then I don't know, but I know that I love beating guys who they say that I can't beat, man. When they tell me that I can't beat somebody, or when they say you are going to lose, I don't know. There's something in me that will not accept that. And when I'm the favorite, even though it shouldn't happen, it's happened to where I get a little bit, I'm like, oh yeah, this guy, like with Journey's a great example. And I don't think I was the favorite by much. I don't even know if I was the favorite. Maybe I was by a little bit.
You guys were even odds.
Even odds, I underestimated him. And like I said, when I got the head kick, that probably worsened it. I should have looked at him more as like a John Dodson in terms of his power and speed. And if I would have done that, trust me, I would have respected him times 10, and that would have never happened. But I didn't. I didn't make that correlation between his explosiveness and his really short reach. But, when I'm the favorite, man, it seems like maybe I just get a little distracted by that. And I'm like, you know what? I am taller. I'm a lot longer. Like, I can do this. And then maybe a little bit of overconfidence sets in, and then I get too aggressive. It's just mistakes. But yeah, every time I'm the underdog, man, I love it. I love it. It's the best for me because there's no pressure. I'm supposed to lose, and it's just, I don't know. There's something magical about it. So I'll tell you that, man. Every time I'm the underdog, I'm undefeated, man. So I'm just going to tell the UFC to start matching me with guys that they're supposed to beat me, because if they tell me I'm supposed to win, I might not,
I love that. It was something
Yeah.
that stood out to me. I was like, that's very, very unusual.
Yeah.
Like every time.
Mhm.
And it's
Every time I noticed it too. Yeah.
yeah, it's crazy. But yeah, before we end it, is there anybody you want to thank, or a social media you'd like to plug before we end it?
Yeah. I just always like to thank, Christ, man, my faith. Without him, I wouldn't really be able to do what I do. And a lot of people, you know, don't really know the story behind me and my salvation and how I came up in the church through fighting. But I always have to mention that because I wouldn't be here without my faith in God. Other than that, man, all my training partners, my family members, and guys like you that continue to grow the sport and reach out and get good interviews. Other than that, man, tune in. August 21st, man. I'm gonna have about what 12 more weeks, I think 13 more weeks of preparation. It's gonna be an amazing fight. That's for sure. So tune in.